Most people have heard of human trafficking, which is often described as modern-day slavery, and it involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. But did you know it can happen in your own backyard? The Human Trafficking Awareness Campaign is being launched all over the province with 20 coalitions that are recognized by the Provincial Anti-Human Trafficking Office. And here in Sault Ste. Marie, one of those alliances has been formed to raise awareness in our community that human trafficking does exist here, and also to assist the victims of human trafficking through advocacy and support. I'm Tim Murphy, and joining me on point today are members of the Hope Alliance, and you might be surprised to hear their stories. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Welcome back to On Point with Tim Murphy, and joining me now in the studio, I have Taylor Piazza from the John Howard Society and Constable Troy Miller from the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services. Welcome to On Point.
Thank you.
And so let's start off with the misconception about human trafficking, because I'm the first one to say, I saw the article on human trafficking, I thought, oh, come on. You know, when I think of human trafficking, I think of busloads of Mexicans sneaking across the border in the U.S. or something. But that is not what we're talking about in this scenario, is it?
No, it can be your neighbor, right? And that's what we want people to realize, that it's anybody. A lot of people think of it on kind of a grander, cinematic kind of scale, right? Where it's a boatload of foreign people coming across the border and whatever.
Being smuggled in.
Yeah, and it's not. And the reality is it's happening on the streets. We see it every day, and it's just a matter of getting the community to know that it's happening here and it's happening in the Sioux.
What sort of, okay, so sex trade is an obvious place where you would find people who are victims of human trafficking. What are some other occupations that you come across where people might be surprised to hear that these people have been brought in illegally and are being basically held against their will?
Sure, there's all kinds of forced labor is what I would define it as. Acts that are being performed for money, however, the people doing them feel trapped. They're trapped in those careers. The foreign nanny coming in, they're dependent on their family, they're being paid less than minimum wage, it's off the books, they're not necessarily properly immigrated, therefore become dependent on that situation, and they're doing jobs they wouldn't otherwise do.
They wouldn't do them, they're not being paid properly, the working conditions, the living conditions aren't up to the standards that, for instance, of anything regulated by the Canadian government or the Ontario government or even a municipal government would allow. There's no protection for them.
Sure, not what you would see in the advertisement when you're reading it in a foreign country to come to Canada, but things quickly change when you get here, right? And how do you deal with that when you're alone in a different country by yourself?
Oh, I never thought of that part of it, that people are actually advertising for these people to come over.
Yeah, recruitment's a huge part of human trafficking, for sure.
So it's entrapment. I mean, they're coming over on the guise of getting a job, and then under the guise of getting a job, and then suddenly here they are, and it's not at all what was promised, but now you came in illegally, how are you going to get home, and maybe getting here. Oh, do the people who are, what would you call the people who do the human trafficking? Do they have
traffickers?
The traffickers. That makes total sense, doesn't it? So the traffickers, then would they oftentimes pay to bring the person over too?
Sure.
I mean, is that so that once they're here, they can't go home again? Not that they have any money. Is that, you know what I'm talking about?
If we're talking about like border crossing kind of trafficking, it would definitely be like a trafficker on this side as well as a trafficker over there. They're working together. But in the sense of kind of trafficking within the community, not necessarily.
Let's talk about that. Who are the vulnerable people who may fall victim to these kinds of human trafficking scams or?
Well, definitely young people, which a lot of people don't realize, but they start recruitment, it's in the stats at about 12 or 13 years old.
Ooh.
So which is terrifying to me, but yeah, young people are because they're susceptible to that, let's have this pretty fantastic life and I'll buy you all this nice stuff and I'll be your boyfriend and all of this kind of idea of what their life could be like, when in reality that's not at all what they're coming into. It's you're working for me. So young people are really high risk for it too.
And you were talking about some of the young people coming down from some of the First Nations communities way up north that are coming into the city, and they're also very vulnerable, and they're looking for a friendship, they're looking for a job, they're looking for a place to stay, and so you run into the wrong person, right?
Certainly. I mean, we can look at statistics for Indigenous peoples and see that the rates of sexual abuse and rates of suicide and et cetera are much higher on those reserves. And people that have those risk factors, when you add those to the desire to get out and get away and make a better life for themselves, they're very vulnerable. And add to that another layer that they're 12, 13, 14 years old and being promised a better life, it certainly looks like things are going to be great. But you get taken away on that ruse and then you're dependent on the person who took you out, it's problematic.
So now, from my understanding, that you've got about 40 different agencies in the Algoma district, Algoma region, that have come together now to form this alliance, and it's called the HOPE Alliance, which stands for Health, Opportunity, and Preventing Exploitation.
Yes.
So when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the work that HOPE is doing, and the fact that this actually does happen in our community, and people are naive and think that not in Sault Ste. Marie. But we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us on Point with Tim Murphy. We'll see you in 60 seconds. Thanks for staying on Point with Tim, Taylor, and Troy. It's Triple T.
Yes.
So we're talking about human trafficking, and during the break I was asking Taylor about the funding can be difficult for this sort of an endeavor because so often government funding is data-based. Now the data that you have indicates that about 90% of the cases that you're dealing with are Canadian citizens who are trapped as victims of human trafficking.
Domestic human trafficking would be, yes.
Domestic human trafficking. So these are people in Canada who are being abused, right? The trick comes though to the unreported cases because we were talking about no documentation. Wouldn't you be afraid then to go to an official or a police officer or someone to say, I'm an illegal alien, I'm an illegal immigrant, and I'm in trouble? So there's who knows how many more cases are not coming forward, right? So it gets tricky when you're saying, you know, we have all these cases and we need some help. But obviously, the government has taken note because there is a new agency in Toronto, newly formed, and that's called?
It's the Provincial Anti-Human Trafficking Coordination Office, and they have staff working out of there who have come and met with the different coalitions in Ontario, and Hope Alliance is one of those coalitions, and they've offered funding for us to kind of do what we need to do to get the word out there that it's something that needs to be dealt with. So that's fairly new office that's just come up in Toronto.
So there is some specific funding, but also you've got all these community partners, the 40 groups that are members of the Alliance, who are also probably, I'm guessing, taking their own staff, their existing staff, and sort of allotting, reassigning or assigning them to the coalition. Do you, Taylor, when you're doing this on behalf of John Howard Society, are you attending the coalition, the Alliance meetings as a volunteer, or?
So the meetings themselves and the things that happen obviously during work hours and whatever, I'm Taylor from John Howard as the co-chair of Hope Alliance. Myself and my other co-chair and a lot of the Alliance members do a lot of things after hours that we're not necessarily paid for.
So you're chairing this as a co-chairing this as a volunteer.
Yes, yeah.
Very noble of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And let's talk a little bit about the Alliance itself and what kind of I know there's 40 of them. We're not going to go through them all now, but Troy, can you just give us an idea of what kinds of agencies are involved in HOPE?
Sure. HOPE was born out of the Neighborhood Resource Center, which is down in Gore Street here in the Soo.
Really? It started down there, okay.
It did. It started back in 2014 after a recognition by the original partners there that something was needed for this kind of problem.
Yes.
Oh my, it happens here. Oh my, what do we do about it? Let's form a group and see what we can do. A lot of frontline workers from agencies who were then participating at the resource center jumped on board. Very humble beginnings, very grassroots, pushing forward a few years now into the realm of a provincial office and funding being allocated. Many other partners have come on board. We break them down into sectors, Tim. So we have justice sector, we have social services, we have healthcare, human services. So wherever those referrals are needed, given the case that you're dealing with at the time, we have the ability to link you with those sectors and or those providers that can probably see a favorable outcome.
The Neighborhood Resource Center on Gore Street is definitely on the front lines. Do you have a fair amount of people who've accessed HOPE through the Neighborhood Resource Center itself?
Sure, not just through the resource center, but through the staff that come there.
Oh, of course, because you have different agencies working out of the Neighborhood Resource Center, which is what makes it so fantastic.
Correct. It gives you access to community partners who you normally wouldn't have if you were in your own building at your own desk. So not only do you have that access when you're at the resource center sitting physically on Gore Street, but if a problem comes to you at, say, the jail, the treatment center, as a worker there who has access to the resource center and Hope Alliance, you can congregate with that group and that audience and come to a resolve with it.
And there's strength in numbers.
Yep, absolutely.
And awareness is key also.
Amen.
So yeah, so let's talk. We're going to take another quick break. See how fast these 5 minutes go, guys, eh? We're going to another 60-second break, but when we come back, we want to talk a little bit about some of the work that you've done. I was asking about being a frontline worker, and you've got some interesting scenario for us to hear about, and the fact that this is in our own backyard in Sault Ste. Marie. Hope Alliance, Health, Opportunity, and Preventing Exploitation. Stay with us. We'll be right back on point. Back with Taylor Piazza from the John Howard Society and Constable Troy Miller from the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services talking about the Hope Alliance. Taylor, you had a case recently that you handled. I was asking you if you are a frontline worker and if you dealt directly with the victims. Very kind of a frightening situation came up recently. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's just a matter of we need to deal with a crisis, and that's where this kind of situation was born. This woman presented she had dealt with the police first and then was presented in court as she had some charges. And John Howard has court workers that go into the cells and speak to people, and she divulged to a John Howard staff that she was being trafficked. That staff happened to be my co-chair, so that worked perfectly. And then she came back and said, we have this situation and we need to get Hope Alliance members together and try and figure out how to deal with it. So we kind of just took our list of agencies and said who's going to be involved, and she couldn't speak English, so we had to find a French person to come in and to do that too. So it was a matter of she's being trafficked, she's not at home, and she can't speak to anybody. So it was probably terrifying for her.
She was from out of province?
Yes.
And she was in Sault Ste. Marie?
Yeah, just driving through. So while she was in custody, we had some time to get some supports in place for her in another province because her traffickers were actively threatening her while she was in custody. And it was a matter of a life or death situation, so we made sure that we could get her supports when she got to the province we were sending her to. The Hope Alliance members kind of just rallied together. We crisis response, grabbed people who were able to come and do case conferences and figure out how to get this girl support. Troy and I and another woman from Hope Alliance drove her to the airport, and we sat there and waited with her and made sure that we stayed there until her flight left because I was not willing to leave until she was gone, and then we were in contact.
Troy was there with his
taser
I know. And his
we needed it.
gun and his big old self.
They don't let me carry that stuff, so
No.
I've asked, so they don't let me.
Wow. And bear spray. Do you have bear spray too?
Well, we don't call it that.
What do you
Fully equipped, yes.
Wow. Okay. So that and now, so she's been relocated.
Yeah.
Who takes care of her? What do you help with that on the other end of things when she arrives to the province, the safe house or whatever you call it?
Yeah. So we were in contact with a shelter there as well as the John Howard there as well. So that was helpful because John Howard's kind of all over Canada. So we were speaking with them, and the John Howard staff were really helpful in getting us other connections in the city. And then we still speak to the shelter that she was sent to, and she's doing really well, and she's attending her counseling appointments, and it was a good case because they don't always go that way, obviously, but she's doing well, so that's good.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So now, what about let me ask this question. Is it generally females? Is that
I would
that are
say
the victims?
Statistically, Tim, it's overwhelmingly female. That said, it's not exclusively female. There are males who are trapped in certain professions, absolutely males trapped in the sex trade as well, although significantly less in numbers, yes.
And so when you have a local case, for instance, we were talking about an out of province, what if it's somebody locally who's experiencing similar things where their life is actually being threatened if they try to escape that environment? We talked, I was talking with Women in Crisis earlier, last week I believe we did an interview, and they were talking about how it's life-threatening trying to get out of these situations sometimes when you have an abuser it's life and death, and that to negotiate the escape from that environment, it's and how do you do that when you're trapped in that environment? So what kind of place, what's in place here in Sault Ste. Marie for people who need to get out, who need to escape?
Sure, I think every situation is different. That said, there are a lot of similarities. Whether it's foreign, domestic, out of province, in province, from Sault Ste. Marie, there's a developed dependency on the trafficker by the traffickee. Whether it's sex trade, whether it's forced labor, it's still the same dynamic. And the ability to break that dynamic and have the traffickee break that dependence. So what's in place, it depends on the situation, because there could be many things at play. There could be addictions problems, there could be mental health issues, there could be physical problems that are keeping that person with their trafficker. So a lot of times when Taylor speaks to getting the right people from Hope into the group, that's what that speaks to. Getting the right people for that specific situation. It may be placement at a drug dependency site. It may be somewhere out of town at a safe haven for a short period. Depending on the situation, we have generally the connections and the tools to do whatever we need to do to deal with that.
And that is because of the alliance that you guys have formed with the other agencies. You have those contacts. Okay, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the campaign itself, which is running from it started on May 23rd, and I think it runs to July 31st. July 31st. Okay, so stay with us on point. I'll be back with Troy and with Taylor talking about Hope Alliance. Be right back, 60 seconds. Thanks for sticking around on point. I'm Tim Murphy, and joining me, as I have mentioned before, is Constable Troy Miller from the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services and Taylor Piazza from John Howard Society. So Hope Alliance is now involved in the campaign, the Anti-Human Trafficking Campaign? Awareness campaign. Yes. Anti-Human Trafficking Awareness Campaign launched on May 23rd, going to July 31st. Yep. Tell me a little bit about the campaign, Taylor.
So the campaign is funded province-wide through the Provincial Anti-Human Trafficking Coordination Office. So there's about 20 or so coalitions that are recognized in the province as coalitions that are working towards dealing with human trafficking. So they funded each one. Ours started on the 23rd. We did a launch barbecue at the Neighborhood Resource Center.
I saw that. It looked like it was very well attended.
It was, yeah. We got a lot of people. I think we got 600 hamburgers and hot dogs, and not one was left, which is perfect because I love to feed people. So that was good. Yeah.
That area next to the way you have that patio, it's not a patio, what would you call it? The boulevard set up beside it?
The parquet,
I was just there the other day, I stopped in to see you, and really nice. I mean, tables there and chairs and places to sit and congregate. It's really, the whole feeling of that neighborhood has changed so much, and I think a lot of it is due to your presence there. So kudos to you guys for setting that place up and for making it so accessible to all the other agencies and to the community. There's a story, I'm going to quickly share the story about the Neighborhood Resource Center. Who was the gentleman that was there originally, the officer who was there originally? Darren, right. So Darren did a thing with some of the kids in the neighborhood where he got them to play hockey with him, and they got all the equipment for the kids, and they encouraged them to go down to the Esposito Park and to play hockey. And then if they showed up for the hockey game, and if after the hockey game, if they came back to talk about safety at the office, they got tickets to the Greyhound game.
Yes.
Oh,
so this was not only were they getting exercise and feeling part of the community and getting safety training, they were rewarded with tickets. So I mean, just great stuff you guys are doing down there. But so you had the barbecue launch down there. What else is coming up with the campaign?
Actually, right now we have a billboard on Albert Street with our kind of information and kind of eye-catching image, if you haven't seen it, as well as one on Trunk Road. So that's part of the campaign, and we're in the process of getting hope-friendly stickers made up for their window clings, and it's for agencies that sit on Hope Alliance or any other business that's going to be willing to, if someone comes in and says, I'm being trafficked, they can reach out.
Almost like
the safe space.
The safe space with the red house kind of thing.
Yes.
So you'll have a decal in the window that someone knows if they go in there, they'll be taken care of.
Yep. Whether that's the agency there that can help them or it's calling one of us, right?
Right. So would retailers be able to become?
Absolutely, if they're willing to. If they're willing to, if that person comes in and says, I need help, and they're willing to even just give us a call so that we can come down there and meet them, absolutely, yeah.
How would someone in the community then reach out to you and let you know that they are interested in being a safe space?
Yeah, they could just send me a quick email or call or come
To
down to the
John
Resource
Howard
Center.
Society?
Yeah.
Or the Neighborhood Resource Center?
We have a Hope Alliance email actually, and then so I can give you that. And then at the Neighborhood Resource Center, there's bound to be at least someone that's on Hope Alliance there, because like again, there's a lot of us. So
Okay.
and the Neighborhood Resource Center is the home for Hope Alliance.
So if
as
you're
well,
watching the show right now, then get a pen and paper handy, because when as I wrap this up, after this segment, I'll come back and I'll give you all that information. If you're watching, I'll give you emails and websites and any kind of other information we have for you. So what was I going to ask you now about the campaign itself? Are there events coming up over the summer or what?
We're going to try and be as involved in the events that are currently happening as we can. So feel free, if you're having an event and you want to invite us to come down, we would love to. As well as things like Rotary Fest and things that are already existing. We're going to try.
Cool.
We've been in talks.
Because this is an awareness campaign, awareness raising. We want people to know that this is happening, and that if someone knows someone who is in trouble, or if somebody is a victim and needs to reach out, what's the best way for them to get help for that person, or for that person to help themselves?
Number one, I think you said it, Tim, that person has to help themselves. A lot of times that's the biggest barrier, is reaching out for help. For us as outreach, we just try and be available.
Okay.
Simply put, we put ourselves there, we put ourselves out there, much like the campaign. We're here, we're waiting, we're able. When you decide that you finally need the help that we can give to you, please come and ask.
All right.
If you are a caregiver or someone who is close to someone who you think needs help, you can certainly come and get that information. We can't force people to take our help.
No, of course not. No.
But we can repeatedly offer and be there at the time that they finally hit that spot where they will take it.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for being here today. It's been a real pleasure. Nice to meet you, Taylor.
You
nice
too.
to see you again, Troy. And I'll be right back to wrap things up. But our thanks to Constable Troy Miller from the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services, and to Taylor Piazza from John Howard Society. Hope Alliance, Health, Opportunity, and Preventing Exploration. And stay tuned. We'll be right back on point. If you'd like more information on the Hope Alliance, or if you or someone you know requires assistance, stop into the Neighborhood Resource Center at 138 Gore Street. That's the corner of Gore and Albert. Or you can also email hopealliancessm@gmail.com. And as Taylor mentioned, you can contact her directly through her email. That's tpiazza, Piazza, tpiazza@jhsossm.ca. That stands for John Howard Society of Sault Ste. Marie. jhsossm.ca. And of course, Hope Alliance does have a Facebook page. Thanks very much for joining us on Point. We'll see you the next time. I'm Tim Murphy.